Hi there, and in this video I'll be talking about Luis Sepúlveda's 1989 debut novel, The Old Man Who Read Love Stories, which I read in both the original Spanish and in English translation. But before coming on to the story, let's begin with a few words about the author himself. Luis Sepúlveda was born in Chile in 1949. His father, who was of Spanish ancestry, was an active member of the Chilean Communist Party, while his mother, a nurse, was of indigenous descent. Sepúlveda himself was politically active from a young age, firstly as a leader of the student movement and then in the Department of Cultural Affairs during the left-wing presidency of Salvador Allende. However, in 1973, a military coup brought General Augusto Pinochet to power. Sepúlveda was arrested and sentenced to 2.5 years in prison. Like most political prisoners in Chile at this time, Sepúlveda was subjected to regular sessions of torture, but these were brought to an end when, after pressure from Amnesty International, he was taken from prison and kept under house arrest. He then escaped, spending a year underground, during which time he became a focus for cultural resistance to the regime until he was rearrested and this time sentenced to life in prison for treason and subversion. Once again, Amnesty came to his aid and his sentence was commuted to 8 years spent in prison in exile. In 1977, he finally escaped Chile, going first to Uruguay, then Brazil, then Paraguay, and finally reaching Ecuador, where he participated in a UN mission into the Amazon jungle, spending 7 months with the Shuar people, assessing the impact of colonization on this tribe. And it's this experience which he drew upon for his debut novel, The Old Man Who Read Love Stories. Sepúlveda's growing interest in environmental issues saw him join Greenpeace, and from 1982 to 1987 he served as a crew member on one of their ships. However, literary success saw him return to terra firma, and in the decades that followed he produced children's books, novels, screenplays and directed films, all while indulging his overriding passion, which was to travel. Sadly, Sepúlveda passed away in 2020 from COVID-19, one of the millions of victims of the global pandemic. Quite a life, I'm sure you'll agree, and if you're interested in reading more about it, I strongly recommend Sepúlveda's book, Full Circle, A South American Journey, which includes a compelling account of his early years and his time as a political prisoner. Okay, that's enough about the man. Now let's turn our attention to the novel, and I'll begin by providing a summary of the story. The Old Man Who Read Love Stories opens with the arrival of a steamboat, a twice-yearly event, at the rural outpost of El Idilio, situated on the edge of the rainforest, and it's in and around this location that the bulk of the action takes place. On the steamboat is a dentist with whom the old man is friends, and after this dentist has finished violently assaulting the mouths of his reluctant clients, 2 Indians arrive by canoe, dragging the corpse of a blonde man with them. This dramatic event brings out the mayor, an ignorant, arrogant, cowardly figure who is the villain of this story. He promptly accuses the Indians of murder, prompting the old man to intervene and demonstrate that a wildcat, an ocelot, was responsible. After this, the dentist and the old man retire to reminisce, and before the dentist's departure, he presents the old man with a couple of books, the romantic novels of which the old man is such an avid reader. With the departure of the steamboat, the main narrative line centers on the wildcat, which is continuing its killing spree, and the mayor pressures the old man into joining him on an expedition which the mayor will lead to find and kill the ocelot, and it's the conclusion of this hunt which forms the climax of the novel. As this main narrative line advances, it's punctuated by a series of flashbacks which recount key episodes from the old man's life, including his marriage, his arrival at El Idilio, the 5 years he spent living with the Shuar Indians, the discovery he could read, and his ensuing passion for literature. Okay, so there's the story, and in the analysis which I'll now provide, I wish to touch upon 4 aspects of this novel. Firstly, the narrative structure. Secondly, the detailed knowledge of life in the rainforest, which is derived from the Shuar people. Thirdly, the way the rainforest itself exercises a moral function, passing judgment on those who enter it. And finally, the role of reading and literature in the story. Now, I've already mentioned in my summary that the main line of the narrative is punctuated by a series of flashbacks, but it's the artistry with which Sepúlveda organises these excursions into the past that help turn this novel into a thing of beauty. In effect, although the text is written in the third person, the departure and return points for these flashbacks create the impression that we are reliving the old man's memories along with him. From this intimate position, we as readers partake of the joys and the sorrows of the old man, and with each flashback, a richer and more complex figure emerges until by the end of the story, we perceive him in his fullness as a man of quite extraordinary qualities. My second point concerns the detailed knowledge of life in the rainforest contained in this novel. This knowledge is derived from the Shuar people, but it's most prominently displayed by the old man in his diagnosis of the deaths being due to the ocelot and in the way he approaches the pursuit of that animal. And there's an almost Sherlock Holmes-like quality in his ability to make deductions from his observations, and I'll just read you one example of this in action. This is from near the beginning of the story when, seeing the mayor abusing the Indians and accusing them of murder, the old man intervenes and gives his view. "You killed him," said the mayor. The Shuar took a step back. "No, Shuar not killing. Don't lie, you finished him off with a machete chop. It's obvious." The sweating fat man drew his revolver and aimed at the shocked natives. "No, Shuar not killing," the one who'd spoken ventured again. The mayor shut him up with a blow from the butt of his gun. A fine jet of blood spurted from the Shuar's forehead. "Don't come here thinking you can treat me like an idiot. You killed him. Start walking. You'll tell me why in my office. Get a move on, you savages. And you, Captain, get ready to take 2 prisoners on board." The skipper of the Sucre merely shrugged in reply. "I'm sorry, you're talking bullshit. That's no machete wound." It was the voice of the old man. The mayor angrily squeezed his handkerchief. "And what do you know about it?" "I know what I can see." The old man walked over to the corpse, bent down, turned the head toward him, and opened the wound with his fingers. "Can't you see the flesh has been torn in strips? Can't you see the gashes are deep on the jaw and get shallower lower down? Can't you see there are 4 gashes, not 1? What the hell are you getting at? That there's no such thing as a 4-bladed machete. Claw marks, an ocelot's claw marks. A full-grown animal killed him. Get a whiff of this." The mayor mopped his neck with his handkerchief. "Smell it? I can see it's putrid. Bend down and smell. Don't be afraid of the dead man or the maggots. Smell his clothes, hair, everything." The fat man overcame his distaste, bent down and sniffed from a healthy distance like a frightened dog. "What's that smell?" asked the old man. Curious bystanders came over and smelled the remains. "I don't know. How should I know? Blood, maggots," answered the mayor. "It reeks of cat piss," said one of the nosy onlookers. "She-cat piss. A big she-cat," specified the old man. "That doesn't prove these 2 didn't kill him." The mayor was trying to reassert his authority, but the attention of the locals was now focused on the old man. He re-examined the corpse. He was killed by a female. The male must be somewhere around, perhaps injured. The female killed him and immediately pissed on him to mark him out, so the other animals wouldn't eat him while she went to look for her mate. Old wives' tales. These jungle men killed him and then sprinkled cat's piss over him. You people will swallow any old rubbish. This ability to read the rainforest only grows in subtlety as the hunt for the ocelot progresses, and it lends this book a level of detail that approaches that of works of anthropology. And in fact, the book this novel most reminds me of is Colin Turnbull's The Forest People, which recounts his time spent among the pygmies. That is also a highly recommended read. Another strength of this novel is the lack of any heavy-handed moralizing by Sepúlveda. Rather than lecture the reader on the evils of colonization and attempts to commercially exploit the rainforest, he instead allows the rainforest itself to exercise a moral function, serving as a test of character for each of those who dare to enter it. There are those like the Shuar people and the old man who are prepared to learn to read its signs, to respect it, and to live in harmony with it, and they shall pass the test, while those who arrive intent on stripping the rainforest of its riches and believe they can defend themselves from its dangers through the use of violence frequently fall victim to their own hubris. A further consequence of Sepúlveda refraining from moralizing is that it foregrounds the Shuar people and by extension other Amazonian tribes who, with their extraordinary knowledge of the rainforest, must have their voices heard if the Amazon is to be saved from destruction, and as such, this book offers a very strong statement in support of indigenous rights. The final point I wish to touch upon is the role of reading and books in this novel. As the title suggests, it's one of its key themes, and the way it's handled is just beautiful and adds an extra layer of magic to the story. Although on the surface there's something comical about the old man's reading, on a deeper level there is a profundity here, and anyone who loves reading, who loves literature, is almost certain to be deeply moved by these sections. I won't quote from them because I wouldn't wish to detract from the pleasure of reading them first for yourself. So there we have it. Without doubt, one of the best short novels I think I've ever read. I was deeply impressed, deeply moved by this book. It only takes a few hours to read. I'll link to it in the description below, and I urge any of you who haven't checked it out to give it a try. Let me know what you make of it in the comments. But for now, all that remains is for me to bid you farewell. So be safe, be strong, and I shall see you anon. Nanu nanu.